You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
Welcome to the latest episode of The Whole Truth podcast. I'm Paul Armstrong. I've just had a great chat with Rob Sennitt. He's the Managing Director of Alicanto Minerals. You may not have heard of Alicanto, and that's because Rob's been keeping his head down, working very hard behind the scenes in Sweden. The project is called Falun, and at Falun he's been working to generate a whole lot of targets around the very historic Falun mine, which has a great track record. It was a world-class project in its day, but has not been exposed to any modern exploration. And Rob's identified a corridor of 3.5 kilometres bound by either end. That's with high-grade mineralisation and a host of targets in between. As I said, he's kept his head down, he's got on with it, but his time is about to come. He's preparing to drill these targets, and with a market capitalisation of just $19 million, you imagine it wouldn't take much for the stock to take off. As you'll hear, Rob is a very measured and considered fellow. Very nice one at that too. He doesn't overcook things, he's not one to stretch the truth, but he does have a tone of confidence in his voice now after having done a lot of legwork, and he's ready to hit the button on the drill bit. So Rob, would you say that Alicanto is the best story to come out of Sweden since ABBA?
Yeah, Paul, it's a pretty interesting one, but yeah, Alicanto's it's a pretty special opportunity. You know, you don't see many opportunities where you have two such high quality projects with, significant historical production in a tier one mining jurisdiction that's had next to no exploration in recent times. With the drill bit being driven by a really high quality team, both sort of here in Sweden and in Sweden as well as in Australia. And we've got the ex-chief geologist of Boliden that's driving the drill bit. So, you've got it all comes together, I think, as a fantastic story. As I say, two fantastic projects, no exploration, great team, with every chance of hopefully, taking what's been a wonderful history and transferring that into a wonderful future.
Now, most people would think of Sweden as a tier one mining jurisdiction, as you just said. But it is, isn't it? It's got a great history of mining and it's very supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. Sweden's actually a fantastic place for us to have our operation. If you look at the Fraser Institute rankings, it's clearly a tier one jurisdiction. Interestingly, Paul, it was largely closed to foreign investment until the early 90s. So has largely been overlooked by the industry. When a lot of companies were running to Africa and South America, Europe really didn't get the attention that those areas got. But, Sweden's, probably one of the largest mining economies in Europe, and the mining history goes back, thousands of years, and, when I first joined the company, for all the discussion of Scandinavia and its green focus, when I was speaking to the politicians, it was really interesting as to how pragmatic they were about their future of their economy and the role that mining has to the role mining has to play in it. And these views have only been enhanced in recent times when you overlay the whole Russian situation and the war with Ukraine. Like, you saw recently, Sweden moved away from its 100% renewable target to a fossil-free energy target by 2040. So, and that's all about this, about short-term energy security. So, it's a bit of a changing place at the moment, Sweden. And if you look at where we are, we're in the south of Sweden and away from the more culturally sensitive areas in the north where the Sami people, largely have their reindeer herding areas and where, when you hear about, the difficulty of securing mining licenses, that tends to be up north in that very culturally sensitive situation. But, as I say, from our discussions with politicians, it's much easier to open up a mine in an area that's already considered a mining district. And where we are in this Bergslagen region, it's a very active mining centre, which isn't very far from Stockholm. In fact, Sala is only about an hour's drive from Stockholm. And the region is really well known for its large-scale, high-grade VMS deposits. And there are some very big mines there, including Garpenberg, owned by Boliden, which is Sweden's largest mining company, and Zinkgruvan, which is owned by Lundin Mining out of the US. and it's in an area where the infrastructure for supporting mining project is fantastic, and you've got mining communities there that have understood mining for thousands of years. So
it's good to hear you've got that Swedish accent down pat. I could hear the pronunciations of that sort of thing. When we talk about the history, though, Rob, is it fair to say Falun, spelled Falun, for the benefit of our listeners here? Falun is your flagship project at the moment. It's your number one project. There's a long history at the Falun mine, isn't it? It was a world-class asset.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And it's interesting, Paul. When I first joined the company towards the end of last year, we had this focus on Sala, and look, the company had done an excellent job in terms of putting together a 10 million tonne resource in only 12 months. But really, and I have no doubt that I'll ultimately be a mine at Sala. But when you look at Falun, to your point, it's just an unbelievable opportunity. Since 92, when it closed, there's almost been no exploration work, and that's just incredible when you consider its history. We put our first hole into, so Falun itself, over that history, which goes back probably 1,000 years, it produced 28 million tonnes at 4% copper and 4 grams per tonne gold at 5% zinc, and for a good portion of its life was the largest copper producer in the Western world. And look, if we can get another sniff of that 4% copper, I mean, this company's worth a fortune. So
they're great grades, aren't they? I mean, when did that come to an end?
Yeah, it came to an end in 92, and largely because the government changed its policy about not underwriting the reclamation, if you like. So, again, a pretty strange situation that a government would do that. So probably a reasonably sensible decision from that. But the company that held the claim at the time wasn't prepared to go forward, so closed down operations at that time, and the operation has been largely dormant since then.
So it didn't run out of metal?
Oh, God, no. Like, really, you've just the old timers mined out the old deposit there, and then there's been a little bit of exploration around, but really not a great deal. And so, as I say, so for us, it's just an extraordinary opportunity to come into at this point in time.
Now, you've been working on this for some months. You might feel a bit like a duck at the moment, in the sense that all the hard work's been below the waterline, and the company's only got a market cap of $19 million. It hasn't, that sort of work is obviously very important in an exploration sense, but probably not the sexiest from a share market perspective. But you've done the hard work, haven't you? You've identified targets, you've got a corridor. Where have you arrived, and is the stock now in a position where you think you're sort of set for activity and takeoff?
Well, yeah, I think so, Paul, because literally we're at the point, we're on the cusp of starting our drilling program, which will pull all of that work together. So look, we put our first hole into the Wittgruvan target in October of last year, which is about 3.5 kilometres away from the historical mine. And look, we hit 43 metres of sulphide mineralisation containing high-grade silver, copper and gold. And that allowed us to interpret that Wittgruvan prospect to be part of a major mineralised mining belt that includes the old Falun mine. When we put that first hole down there, we got this off-hole conductor that has the potential to be another Falun-style ore body. When we put a follow-up hole down there, we hit this 8 metres of copper stringer mineralisation, which we know sits in the footwall of Falun. So as you can imagine, this is a major target for us. And then, since that time, we've now identified a number of gravity anomalies on that 3.5 kilometre trend as we move from Wittgruvan to the Falun mine. And we got that excited about what we had. We then acquired the old Falun mine claim, which we didn't have, which then consolidated our land holding in the region to over 300 square kilometres and 60 kilometres of that target limestone. So, once we got that, we got 1,400 holes of a drill database, which we've now combined with all the work that we've done into some pretty sophisticated modelling, and that's now allowed us to identify, some really high priority targets in that key 3.5 kilometre target area, if you like.
So that's your core focus, Rob, that 3.5 Ks. And what that's, in summary, that stretches from the historic Falun mine to the area where you got those spectacular results that you just referred to, with targets along the 3.5 kilometre stretch.
That's absolutely correct. And so we've probably got there, numerous areas with numerous targets in them, and a lot of hard work's gone into doing that. And so just numerous set up targets are sort of ready to go for us.
So as I said, it's not the most exciting work, but it's absolutely crucial. Getting down to the sexier bit now, what happens next?
Yeah, so we're in the process of putting out a drill tender at the current time. We'll sort of organise a 5,000-7,000 metre drill program, and once that and the target is to start drilling this quarter. Once all of that's done, once we're sort of through the summer period up there in Sweden, and everyone's sort of back to work again, and that process will continue through to the end of the year as we push that forward.
And then what's basically drilling the targets, testing the targets, looking to achieve rapid resource growth, presumably. That's the overall objective here.
100%. And look, as I say, there's more than enough to do up there at the moment. I mean, it's just been amazing what's come out when you sort of think about some of that. Some of those targets. I've sort of mentioned Whitgroove, and I've mentioned those gravity targets along the line, but we got some really, really interesting results around the old Falun mine, if you like. We've identified mineralisation outside the previous mining voids, and that mineralisation is open in several of those older unmined drill intersections. Where we had hits like 50 metres at 3.5 grams per tonne gold.
So you've got a fantastic head start there. Yeah, obviously high grade, known mineralisation outside the resource. From that perspective, it's going to be a bit like shooting fish in the barrel, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but let's see how the drilling goes. But as I say, we've got a great stand-up targets all ready to go. So it's a great spot to be in with that. You really had to stop and do the hard work, get those targets in place. When you've got a market cap like we do, you've got to really make sure that drill program is as efficient as possible. And I think getting a really serious a driller on board, it's been a little bit hit and miss in the past, but but very keen here to get a quality driller and a quality drill program underway.
But that market cap, as you say, okay, it's only circa $20 million, but that's where the investors' leverage is, isn't it? $20 million, a couple of good results, you're suddenly up and away.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a great shame that the market really doesn't appreciate the opportunity that we have. But look, I largely put that down to the status of markets globally, if you like. But it's going to be a great ride for those that are on board as we seek to build on the history of those amazing mines.
Speaking of those on board, you've got a couple of names there, haven't you? In terms of shareholders, consultants, and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a couple of bigger investors out of the US that have really sort of picked up and continue to support us over recent times, and a very supportive register. The top 60-70% of our register just continues to accumulate their holdings, which is really encouraging and fantastic.
And Steve Parsons of Bellevue fame, he's in there.
Steve's our biggest shareholder, which is so he's really when he looks at those intersections at Falun, he just sort of shakes his head and tells me that that's some of the best results he's ever seen. So gives me a lot of comfort that for a guy that sort of built something like Bellevue, which has been as successful as it has, for him to say that is really encouraging in terms of what we've got. In fact, we probably started in a better position than Bellevue started when it kicked off its life.
And Steve Parsons has tipped a whole lot of his hard-earned money into this stock. He's highly regarded as an exploration geo, isn't he? That's arguably his core strength. So the fact that he's recognised the potential of this, he's put his dough into it, that's rather comforting.
Yeah, look, absolutely. As I say, for guys that have been there and done it before, it's fantastic. So Steve is very involved in terms of the drilling program and the geological work that we've been doing. And then, as I say, we've got Eric Lundstrom on the ground who knows that geology better than anybody else. So you put the two of those guys together and it's a pretty dynamic team.
So what should we expect over the next few months, Rob? What's the plan of attack?
Yeah, it's very much sort of involved with getting this drilling program up and going and getting some results out into the market. And as I say, we've a lot of that hard work has now been done. I think we've got some really great targets in front of us, and now it's just all about getting that drill bit into those areas.
And just quickly, as you mentioned before, Rob, you have the Sala project.
Yes.
Is that sort of sitting there waiting for you to play a similar game?
Oh, look, I think it absolutely is. I think when you're in our position, the difficulty is with a limited budget. The focus just has to be on Falun. But as I mentioned, we've got a 10 million tonne resource there, and when you look at the history of Sala, it produced 200 million ounces of silver at just phenomenal grades. 1,244 grams per tonne on average. So that's still very, very much part of our thinking, and it's a really crucial asset to the company. And I have no doubt there's ultimately going to be a mine there. And we continue to think around what the right strategy is for Sala, given our immediate focus absolutely needs to be on Falun.
There's been a rash of bullish silver forecasts I've seen in the past few weeks, and we know that Europe is desperate to get its hands on these sorts of metals, isn't it? Become more self-sufficient.
Absolutely. You think Europe, consumes about 25% of the world's commodities and produces 3%. Again, as I say, you overlay the Russian situation over that situation, and there's a real push from the EU to move towards greater self-sufficiency, and it's looking to countries like Sweden and other major mining companies in Europe to fill that gap. So, as I said to many people, it really feels for me in Sweden at the moment, it's right time, right place to be there. You've got a supportive bureaucracy that really is looking to get mines up and running, as opposed to not, if you like. Like, there's a real impetus there to up production of raw materials, and even in Sweden, you look at some of these new businesses starting up, the Norvolt battery sustainable battery business up north there. The H2 green steel business that started up. All of these companies require raw materials, and to get those from Sweden is just a huge bonus for those companies and the country.
Rob, I can sort of sense your frustration to the degree that you've done all this hard work at Falun particularly, and you've got known high-grade mineralisation, you've got some great targets, you've identified this corridor of riches over 3.5 kilometres. It really is an explorer's dream. If that were in the outback in Western Australia, I suspect people would be queuing up for a site visit. But as you get into it and it generates some news flow, I have no doubt that you'll get a response and the awareness will grow. You've done some great work, as you say. You've got to spend the money carefully, hence all the legwork you've been doing. But I do get a feeling that perhaps your time and Alicanto's time is about to arrive.
Oh, look, let's hope so, Paul. I think, as I said, I joined because I thought these assets just looked almost too good to be true. And, let's hopefully the proof will be in the pudding as we get through this drill program. I mean, Eric, our geologist in Sweden, says, it's the one area. He's never worked in an area with such prospectivity, and he's got 6 discoveries up in that region to his credit. So, yeah, look, I think it's all in front of us now, and now we've actually just got to deliver, and hopefully we do that with the once we start that drill program.
Fantastic, Rob. Thanks for your time today. It's a great story. You've obviously worked very hard and studiously without a lot of recognition behind the scenes, but that's what good exploration is based on, and we cross our fingers and toes that the results will come in for you and Alicanto shareholders. All the best. Thanks again.
Really appreciate it, Paul. Thanks for your time.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.